The morning sun cast long shadows across Westminster Abbey as King Charles III adjusted his ceremonial robes one final time. Today marked more than just another royal engagement. It represented a pivotal moment in the monarchy's evolution. The Commonwealth Day service had always held special significance, but this year carried extraordinary weight as Charles prepared to lead the ceremony alongside Princess Kate, who would serve as his primary support in guiding the senior royals through this crucial event. Inside the private preparation rooms of the Abbey, the atmosphere buzzed with careful coordination. Charles had spent weeks planning every detail of this service, understanding that his leadership during Commonwealth Day would send powerful messages to 54 nations across the globe. The Commonwealth represented his mother's greatest legacy, a voluntary association of countries that had chosen to remain connected despite their independence. Now, as the new monarch, Charles felt the profound responsibility of maintaining those bonds while adapting the institution for modern times. Princess Kate arrived early that morning, her presence immediately bringing a sense of calm efficiency to the proceedings. She had studied extensively for this role, understanding that her position as the future queen consort meant she must seamlessly support the king while also demonstrating her own commitment to Commonwealth values. Her deep navy ensemble was chosen carefully, elegant enough to show respect for the occasion, yet approachable enough to connect with the diverse crowd of Commonwealth representatives who would attend. The princess moved through the preparation areas with quiet confidence, checking on arrangements and ensuring that every senior royal understood their specific responsibilities for the day. This wasn't merely about following protocol. Kate had developed a genuine passion for Commonwealth work over the years, particularly focusing on early childhood development initiatives that spanned multiple member nations. Her personal investment in these causes made her an authentic advocate, rather than simply a ceremonial figurehead. Charles watched his daughter-in-law coordinate with palace staff and felt a deep sense of gratitude for her dedication. The transition period following his mother's death had been challenging for the entire royal family, but Kate had emerged as a stabilizing force who could bridge the gap between tradition and modernization. Her ability to connect with people from all backgrounds while maintaining royal dignity made her invaluable during public events like Commonwealth Day. The King's mind wandered to the broader significance of this gathering. The Commonwealth faced numerous challenges in the contemporary world: economic disparities, climate change, political tensions, and questions about relevance in an increasingly fragmented global landscape. Charles knew that symbolic gestures alone wouldn't solve these problems, but he also understood the power of unity and shared purpose that events like this could inspire. His role was to demonstrate that the Commonwealth remained vital and responsive to its members' needs. As the morning progressed, other senior royals began arriving for their final briefings. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach and extensive Commonwealth experience, reviewed the guest list with meticulous attention. Prince William, despite his own growing responsibilities, had cleared his schedule to support his father during this important event. Even the elderly Duke of Gloucester, despite his advancing years, insisted on participating to show continuity with previous generations of royal service. Kate took particular care in coordinating with the younger royals, understanding that their presence would help demonstrate the monarchy's future commitment to Commonwealth relationships. She had spent considerable time over the previous weeks reaching out to youth organizations across Commonwealth nations, ensuring that their voices would be heard during the service. This wasn't traditional royal protocol, but Kate recognized that engaging with younger generations was essential for the Commonwealth's long-term survival. The princess also worked closely with Commonwealth High Commissioners and diplomatic representatives who had traveled to London for the event. Her genuine interest in their country's challenges and achievements had earned her respect among diplomatic circles. Unlike purely ceremonial interactions, Kate engaged in substantive conversations about shared initiatives, economic partnerships, and cultural exchanges that could strengthen Commonwealth bonds. Security preparations had been extensive. Given the number of international dignitaries attending, Charles had specifically requested that security measures be comprehensive yet unobtrusive, wanting the service to feel welcoming rather than fortress-like. The king understood that the Commonwealth's strength lay in its openness and accessibility, values that needed to be reflected in how events were conducted. The musical selections for the service had been chosen to represent the Commonwealth's diversity, featuring compositions from various member nations alongside traditional British hymns. Charles had personally approved each piece, ensuring that the service would celebrate the rich cultural heritage that Commonwealth membership brought together. The Abbey's choir had rehearsed extensively with guest musicians from across the Commonwealth, creating a truly collaborative musical experience. As the final preparations continued, Kate reviewed the schedule one more time with the King's private secretary. Every moment of the service had been planned to maximize its impact, while honoring Commonwealth traditions. The princess had suggested several modifications to make the event more inclusive, including ensuring that representatives from smaller Commonwealth nations had prominent roles rather than being overshadowed by larger, more influential members. The king took a moment to reflect on his mother's approach to Commonwealth leadership. Queen Elizabeth II had made these relationships a cornerstone of her reign, traveling extensively and maintaining personal connections with Commonwealth leaders across decades. Charles knew he couldn't simply replicate her methods. Times had changed, and so had expectations. However, he could build upon her foundation while bringing his own perspective to these important relationships. Outside the Abbey, crowds had begun gathering despite the early hour. Commonwealth flags flew alongside the Union Jack, creating a colorful display that symbolized the unity and diversity that the organization represented. Charles could hear the distant sounds of preparation as he made his final mental preparations for the service. Today would test his ability to lead not just the United Kingdom, but to inspire confidence among Commonwealth nations that the monarchy remained relevant and committed to their shared values. The responsibility felt immense, but Charles drew strength from Kate's steady presence and the support of his family. Together, they would guide the senior royals through this significant event, demonstrating that the monarchy could adapt and evolve while maintaining its core commitments to service and international cooperation. The great doors of Westminster Abbey swung open as the first guests began arriving for the Commonwealth Day service. Princess Kate positioned herself strategically near the entrance, understanding that her role as greeter would set the tone for the entire event. Her warm smile and genuine enthusiasm for meeting Commonwealth representatives immediately created an atmosphere of welcome, rather than formal distance. High Commissioner after High Commissioner approached, each representing their nation with pride and anticipation. Kate had spent considerable time learning about recent developments in their countries, enabling her to engage in meaningful conversations rather than generic pleasantries. When the representative from Barbados arrived, she inquired specifically about their recent renewable energy initiatives. The High Commissioner's face lit up with surprise and pleasure that the princess had taken such detailed interest in their national priorities. King Charles observed these interactions from a discreet distance, feeling immense pride in how naturally Kate connected with people from such diverse backgrounds. Her ability to make each person feel valued and heard was exactly what the Commonwealth needed, personal attention that went beyond ceremonial politeness. The king knew that these individual moments of connection would ripple outward, strengthening relationships between the monarchy and Commonwealth nations in ways that formal speeches alone could never achieve. The arrival of youth delegates brought particular energy to the gathering. Kate had specifically requested that young Commonwealth representatives be included prominently in the service, recognizing that their generation would ultimately determine the organization's future relevance. She knelt down to speak with children from various nations, asking about their schools, their dreams, and their understanding of what Commonwealth membership meant to them. These conversations, though brief, demonstrated the monarchy's commitment to engaging with future generations rather than focusing solely on established leaders. As more senior royals arrived, Kate seamlessly coordinated their positioning and interactions. Princess Anne, with her extensive Commonwealth experience, was directed toward the diplomatic section where her knowledge of various nations' challenges could be most effectively utilized. Prince William was positioned near the youth delegates, where his own experience with younger generations could create meaningful connections. Each royal family member was strategically placed to maximize their unique strengths and interests. The king moved through the gathering with measured dignity, but his interactions carried genuine warmth that surprised many observers. Charles had often been perceived as more formal than his mother, But his approach to Commonwealth relationships showed a different side of his personality. When he spoke with the Prime Minister of a small Pacific Island nation about climate change challenges, his knowledge and concern were clearly authentic, rather than brief talking points. Musical preparations added another layer of excitement to the pre-service gathering. The Commonwealth Youth Orchestra, comprising young musicians from across member nations, was conducting final sound checks. The rehearsal music drifted through the Abbey, creating a soundtrack that celebrated the diversity of Commonwealth cultures. Kate paused in her hosting duties to listen to a particularly beautiful piece composed by a teenager from Ghana, her appreciation clearly visible to nearby guests. The ceremonial aspects of the event required careful coordination. Kate worked closely with the Abbey's staff to ensure that Commonwealth flags were properly displayed, and that the order of procession would honor both protocol and the inclusive spirit the king wanted to promote. She had suggested modifications to traditional arrangements, ensuring that smaller nations received appropriate recognition rather than being overshadowed by more prominent Commonwealth members. Security remained invisible, but comprehensive. The king had insisted that protective measures not interfere with the welcoming atmosphere he wanted to create. Kate had specifically requested that security personnel be briefed on Commonwealth protocols, ensuring that international guests wouldn't encounter unnecessary barriers or confusion. The goal was to demonstrate that the monarchy remained accessible while maintaining appropriate safety standards. Behind the scenes, palace staff worked efficiently to address last-minute details. Kate had established a coordination system that allowed for quick communication between different areas of the Abbey, ensuring that any issues could be resolved without disrupting the gathering. Her organizational skills, developed through years of royal engagements, proved invaluable in managing such a complex international event. The king took time for private conversations with several Commonwealth leaders who had traveled significant distances to attend. These weren't formal diplomatic meetings, but personal connections that acknowledged the effort and respect these leaders had shown by participating. Charles understood that Commonwealth relationships depended heavily on personal bonds between leaders, and he used every opportunity to strengthen these connections. Kate's attention to detail extended to ensuring that dietary requirements, cultural sensitivities, and accessibility needs were all addressed. She had personally reviewed arrangements for Commonwealth guests who required prayer space, specific meal considerations, or mobility assistance. These seemingly small gestures demonstrated the monarchy's commitment to making all Commonwealth members feel truly welcomed and valued. The diversity of languages being spoken throughout the Abbey created a remarkable atmosphere. Kate had arranged for discreet translation services, but many guests were pleased to discover that several royal family members could communicate in multiple languages. The princess herself greeted several guests in their native languages, having spent weeks preparing for these interactions. As the formal service time approached, Kate began the delicate process of guiding guests toward their designated seating. This required diplomatic skill, as protocol demanded certain arrangements while the king's vision called for more inclusive positioning. The princess managed to honor both requirements by creating a seating plan that respected traditional precedents while ensuring that all Commonwealth nations felt appropriately recognized. The king watched with growing confidence as the pre-service gathering demonstrated exactly the spirit he had hoped to create. Commonwealth representatives were engaging with each other, sharing experiences and building connections that extended far beyond their relationships with the British monarchy. This networking effect was precisely what Charles believed the Commonwealth needed: stronger bonds between member nations themselves, facilitated by their shared connection to the crown. The energy in the Abbey continued building as more guests arrived and connections formed. Kate moved seamlessly between groups, introducing Commonwealth representatives to each other and facilitating conversations that might lead to future collaborations. Her role as facilitator was proving just as important as her ceremonial duties, demonstrating how modern royal service could create practical value for Commonwealth relationships. The magnificent organ of Westminster Abbey filled the ancient stone walls with the opening chords of the Commonwealth Day service. King Charles and Princess Kate took their positions at the front of the procession, leading the senior royals in a carefully choreographed entrance that balanced traditional ceremony with the inclusive spirit they wanted to establish. The king's steady pace allowed guests to fully appreciate the significance of the moment while demonstrating his comfort. In his new role as head of the Commonwealth, Kate walked slightly behind and to the side of the king, her positioning deliberate to show support while not overshadowing his leadership. Her presence provided a bridge between the monarchy's ceremonial traditions and its modern accessibility. As they processed down the nave, she maintained gentle eye contact with Commonwealth representatives, acknowledging their presence with subtle nods that conveyed personal recognition rather than distant formality. The abbey itself seemed to embrace the international gathering. Sunlight streaming through the historic stained glass windows created patterns of color that danced across the diverse congregation. The building, which had witnessed centuries of British history, now hosted representatives from nations across the globe who had chosen to maintain their connection to the crown despite their independence. This voluntary association was precisely what made the Commonwealth unique among international organizations. Princess Anne followed in the procession, her military bearing and extensive Commonwealth experience evident in every step. Her decades of work with various Commonwealth organizations had earned her deep respect among the assembled delegates. Behind her, Prince William walked with the confident stride of someone who understood his future responsibilities to these relationships. The younger generation of royals brought energy and hope to the ceremony, suggesting continuity and evolution rather than mere preservation of tradition. As the procession reached the altar area, King Charles paused to acknowledge the Commonwealth High Commissioners seated in a place of honor. This gesture, though small, carried significant diplomatic weight. It demonstrated that the monarch viewed these representatives not as subjects but as partners in a voluntary association of equals. The king's brief bow toward their section sent a clear message about his approach to Commonwealth leadership. The service began with readings from across the Commonwealth, each delivered in the speaker's native language before being translated into English. This multilingual approach was Kate's suggestion, reflecting her belief that the Commonwealth's strength lay in its diversity rather than in homogenization. A young woman from Bangladesh read a passage about unity and diversity, her clear voice carrying across the abbey with remarkable confidence. Following her, an elder from New Zealand shared a traditional blessing that had been passed down through generations of his people. The musical selections throughout the service showcased the Commonwealth's rich cultural heritage. The Abbey Choir was joined by musicians from various member nations, creating harmonies that literally brought together different musical traditions. A steel drum ensemble from Trinidad and Tobago provided rhythmic support for a hymn, while a children's choir from Kenya added their voices to a song of thanksgiving. Kate had specifically requested these collaborative musical moments, understanding that shared artistic expression could create emotional connections that transcended political boundaries. King Charles delivered the main address of the service, speaking without notes in a style that felt conversational rather than formal. His words focused on the Commonwealth as a force for good in an increasingly divided world, emphasizing practical cooperation rather than symbolic gestures. The king spoke about climate change initiatives that were already underway between Commonwealth nations, educational exchanges that were building future leaders, and economic partnerships that were creating opportunities for smaller member countries. The king's speech included personal anecdotes from his travels to Commonwealth nations, demonstrating his genuine knowledge of and affection for these relationships. He spoke about meeting young entrepreneurs in Jamaica who were developing sustainable technologies, about visiting schools in India, where Commonwealth scholarship recipients were preparing for futures that would benefit their home communities, and about witnessing environmental restoration projects in Australia that were being replicated across multiple Commonwealth nations. Kate watched the audience carefully during the king's speech, noting which topics resonated most strongly with different groups of representatives. Her observations would inform future Commonwealth initiatives, ensuring that royal support aligned with the actual priorities of member nations rather than imposing external agendas. The princess had developed this skill through years of public engagements, learning to read audiences and understand what truly mattered to the people she met. The service included a moment of silent reflection for Commonwealth nations facing particular challenges. This acknowledgement of current difficulties demonstrated that the monarchy understood the real-world pressures facing member countries. Rather than pretending that Commonwealth membership solved all problems, The king's approach acknowledged challenges while emphasizing mutual support and shared resources for addressing them. Youth delegates were invited to participate in a special segment of the service, presenting gifts to the king that represented their nation's hopes for the future. A teenager from Ghana presented a small sculpture made from recycled materials, symbolizing their country's commitment to environmental sustainability. A young man from Canada offered a book of poetry written by Indigenous youth, representing the importance of including all voices in Commonwealth conversations. Kate received these gifts alongside the king, her genuine interest in each presentation evident to the entire congregation. She asked thoughtful questions about the symbols and their meanings, demonstrating that royal attention extended beyond mere politeness to authentic engagement. These interactions, though brief, created memorable moments for the young people involved and sent powerful messages about the monarchy's interest in youth perspectives. The ceremonial aspects of the service maintained their traditional dignity while incorporating contemporary elements that reflected Commonwealth evolution. Ancient prayers were followed by modern commitments to sustainable development, human rights, and democratic governance. This blending of old and new captured the essence of what the king hoped the Commonwealth could become, an organization rooted in shared history but focused on future cooperation. As the service progressed toward its conclusion, the atmosphere in the Abbey had shifted from formal ceremony to genuine celebration. Commonwealth representatives were clearly moved by the personal attention they had received and the inclusive spirit that had been demonstrated. Kate and Charles had succeeded in creating an environment where protocol served relationship building rather than creating barriers between people. The final hymn brought together all the musical elements that had been featured throughout the service. Commonwealth flags were raised as the diverse voices joined in song, creating a moment of unity that transcended national boundaries. The King and Princess Kate stood together, their partnership in leading this event having demonstrated how traditional monarchy could adapt to serve contemporary international relationships. Following the conclusion of the formal service, King Charles and Princess Kate led the transition to a reception that would allow for more personal interactions with Commonwealth representatives. The king had specifically designed this portion of the event to move beyond ceremonial protocol toward substantive conversations that could strengthen real relationships. Kate coordinated the flow of guests from the Abbey to the nearby reception venue, ensuring that the momentum and positive atmosphere from the service continued seamlessly. The reception space had been arranged to encourage mingling rather than formal receiving lines. Kate had suggested this approach, understanding that meaningful connections were more likely to develop through natural conversations than through brief formal introductions. Round tables were scattered throughout the space, each featuring displays highlighting different Commonwealth initiatives and achievements. This setup allowed guests to gravitate toward topics that interested them, while providing natural conversation starters. King Charles moved through the reception with remarkable ease, his earlier nervousness having been replaced by genuine enthusiasm for these interactions. His conversation with the Prime Minister of Malta revealed his detailed knowledge of their renewable energy projects, while his discussion with youth delegates from South Africa demonstrated his understanding of their educational challenges and aspirations. The king's preparation for this event had clearly extended far beyond protocol briefings to include serious study of Commonwealth developments. Princess Kate positioned herself strategically to facilitate introductions between Commonwealth representatives who might benefit from knowing each other. Her diplomatic instincts, developed through years of royal engagements, proved invaluable in identifying potential collaborations and partnerships. When she introduced the education minister from Rwanda to a technology entrepreneur from Singapore, their immediate engagement in discussion about digital learning platforms demonstrated the practical value of these royal connections. The catering for the reception showcased Commonwealth diversity, featuring traditional dishes from various member nations alongside British classics. Kate had personally worked with the catering team to ensure authentic representations of different cuisines, understanding that food could serve as both cultural bridge and conversation starter. The princess was seen sampling dishes from different countries while engaging their representatives in conversations about culinary traditions and their cultural significance. Senior royals distributed themselves throughout the reception to maximize Coverage and personal attention for Commonwealth guests. Princess Anne gravitated toward the area featuring agricultural and environmental displays, where her expertise and long-standing interest in rural development could contribute meaningfully to conversations. Prince William spent considerable time with the youth delegation, his natural ease with younger people creating an animated discussion about social media, climate activism, and the role of monarchy in contemporary society. The king took particular care to spend time with representatives from smaller Commonwealth nations who might otherwise be overlooked in favor of larger, more influential members. His conversation with the delegate from Tuvalu about rising sea levels was both informed and empathetic, demonstrating that Commonwealth leadership meant paying attention to all members regardless of their size or global influence. These interactions reinforced the fundamental Commonwealth principle that membership created equality regardless of national power or wealth. Kate observed throughout the reception how different royal family members connected with various Commonwealth representatives, making mental notes about successful combinations that could be developed in future events. Her systematic approach to relationship building extended beyond individual encounters to strategic thinking about how royal resources could be most effectively deployed to support Commonwealth goals. The informal nature of the reception allowed for conversations that would have been impossible during the formal service. A group discussion developed around one table about Commonwealth trade opportunities, with representatives from several nations sharing experiences and exploring potential collaborations. Kate joined this conversation, contributing insights about social enterprises she had encountered during royal visits and connecting these experiences to the broader discussion about economic development. Music continued to play an important role during the reception, with performances by Commonwealth artists creating both entertainment and cultural education. A folk singer from Scotland performed alongside a musician from Pakistan, their collaboration highlighting how different musical traditions could complement each other. Kate had arranged for these musical partnerships, understanding that artistic collaboration often created emotional connections that formal diplomacy alone could not achieve. The king used the reception to announce several new Commonwealth initiatives that he and Kate had been developing behind the scenes. A scholarship program for students from smaller Commonwealth nations would provide educational opportunities in various member countries, not just the United Kingdom. An environmental restoration fund would support climate adaptation projects across Commonwealth nations, with particular emphasis on assisting island nations facing rising sea levels. These announcements were made informally during conversations rather than through formal speeches, creating a more intimate and personal atmosphere. Kate had suggested this approach, believing that major initiatives would have greater impact if they emerged from genuine conversations rather than prepared presentations. The reception guests appreciated being included in these announcements as partners rather than simply audience members. Technology played a subtle but important role during the reception, with digital displays showing real-time updates about Commonwealth projects and achievements. Kate had worked with palace staff to ensure that these technological elements enhanced rather than dominated the personal interactions that were the event's primary focus. Video messages from Commonwealth leaders who couldn't attend in person were integrated naturally into conversations rather than presented as formal presentations. The princess paid particular attention to ensuring that language differences didn't create barriers to meaningful participation. Translation services were available, but Kate also made efforts to include Commonwealth representatives in conversations where multiple languages were being used naturally. Her own multilingual abilities, while limited, demonstrated respect for linguistic diversity and encouraged others to make similar efforts. As the reception progressed, it became clear that the event was succeeding in its goal of strengthening Commonwealth relationships through personal connections. Business cards were being exchanged, future meetings were being arranged, and collaborative projects were being discussed. The King and Kate had created an environment where Commonwealth membership translated into practical benefits, rather than merely ceremonial recognition. The success of the reception reflected months of careful planning and preparation, but also the genuine commitment that both the King and Princess Kate had made to understanding Commonwealth needs and priorities. Their approach to this event demonstrated how traditional monarchy could evolve to serve contemporary international relationships while maintaining the dignity and continuity that made royal involvement valuable to Commonwealth. Partners. The atmosphere throughout the reception remained warm and engaging, with laughter and animated conversations filling the space. Commonwealth representatives clearly felt welcomed and valued, while royal family members appeared genuinely energized by these international connections. The partnership between King Charles and Princess Kate in hosting this event had proven highly effective in achieving their shared goals for Commonwealth relationship building. As the afternoon reception drew to a close, King Charles and Princess Kate prepared for what many considered the most challenging aspect of Commonwealth Day, the private meetings with individual nation representatives who had requested specific audiences with the monarch. These sessions required delicate diplomatic balance, as Commonwealth leaders often brought complex issues that needed royal attention while expecting practical support rather than mere symbolic acknowledgement. The first meeting involved representatives from 3 Pacific Island nations facing immediate threats from climate change. King Charles had specifically requested that Kate join this discussion, knowing that her environmental advocacy work would add substance to their conversation. The princess had spent considerable time studying the specific challenges facing these nations, understanding that royal expressions of concern needed to be backed by genuine knowledge and practical commitment. The island representatives presented stark realities about rising sea levels, increased storm intensity, and threats to freshwater supplies that endangered their population's survival. King Charles listened with focused attention, asking detailed questions that demonstrated his understanding of both the scientific and human dimensions of their crisis. Kate contributed insights about adaptation strategies she had observed during royal visits to other affected regions, creating a discussion that was both informative and solution-oriented. Rather than offering empty reassurances, the king committed to specific actions that the monarchy could take to support these nations. He promised to use his platform to advocate for increased international climate funding, to facilitate connections between Commonwealth climate researchers and these island nations, and to ensure that their voices were heard at upcoming international environmental conferences. Kate suggested establishing a Commonwealth climate adaptation network that could share resources and strategies between affected nations. The next meeting brought together education ministers from several African Commonwealth nations who were developing collaborative programs for teacher training and curriculum development. Princess Kate took the lead in this discussion, drawing upon her extensive work with early childhood development initiatives. Her knowledge of educational challenges facing Commonwealth nations allowed her to contribute meaningfully to conversations about resource sharing and best practices. The education discussion revealed the practical value of Commonwealth connections when nation representatives discovered they were facing similar challenges and could benefit from shared solutions. Kate facilitated connections between ministers who had developed successful programs and those who were still seeking effective approaches. The princess suggested that royal patronage could help raise the profile of these educational initiatives and attract additional international support. King Charles joined the education discussion to address questions about recognition and accreditation of Commonwealth educational qualifications across member nations. His understanding of international education standards impressed the gathered ministers, while his commitment to supporting educational mobility within the Commonwealth created excitement about expanded opportunities for students and teachers. A particularly sensitive meeting involved representatives from Commonwealth nations experiencing political tensions or economic difficulties. The king approached these conversations with careful neutrality, offering royal support for democratic institutions and human rights while avoiding interference in domestic political matters. Kate's presence during these discussions provided additional perspective, particularly on issues affecting women and children in challenging circumstances. These private meetings revealed the complexity of modern Commonwealth relationships, where member nations expected royal leadership to extend beyond ceremonial functions to practical support for their development goals. King Charles and Princess Kate had clearly prepared extensively for these conversations, demonstrating knowledge that went far beyond briefing papers to include personal understanding of different nations' histories, cultures, and aspirations. The king's approach to these individual meetings reflected his vision of Commonwealth leadership as facilitation rather than domination. Rather than imposing British perspectives or solutions, he worked to understand each nation's unique circumstances and to identify ways that royal influence could support their chosen development paths. This approach required considerable diplomatic skill and cultural sensitivity. Kate's contributions to these meetings demonstrated her evolution from ceremonial royal figure to substantive policy participant. Her questions revealed genuine interest in learning from Commonwealth partners, rather than simply offering predetermined assistance. The princess had clearly developed her own expertise in areas where royal involvement could make meaningful differences to Commonwealth development. Between meetings, King Charles and Princess Kate took time to discuss what they were learning and to coordinate their responses to various requests for royal support. These brief consultations showed their effective partnership in Commonwealth work, with each bringing different strengths and perspectives to their shared responsibilities. The king's experience and constitutional knowledge complemented Kate's fresh insights and practical approach to problem-solving. The final private meeting of the day involved youth leaders from across the Commonwealth who had been selected to present their vision for the organization's future. This session was intentionally informal, with the king and Princess Kate sitting in a circle with the young people, rather than maintaining formal protocol. The conversation that developed was both inspiring and challenging, as these future leaders offered honest assessments of Commonwealth relevance and suggestions for necessary changes. The youth leaders spoke candidly about their generation's expectations for Commonwealth leadership, including demands for greater action on climate change, more opportunities for international mobility, and stronger support for democratic governance and human rights. King Charles and Princess Kate listened carefully to these perspectives, asking questions that demonstrated their serious consideration of these young people's concerns. Kate was particularly engaged with the youth discussion, sharing her own observations about changing social attitudes and expectations for institutional leadership. Her ability to connect with younger perspectives while maintaining royal dignity created a productive dynamic that encouraged honest communication rather than deferential politeness. The king responded to youth concerns by outlining several new initiatives that would specifically address their priorities, including expanded Commonwealth scholarship programs, support for youth-led climate projects, and regular consultation opportunities between young Commonwealth leaders and royal representatives. These commitments went beyond traditional royal functions to include active advocacy for policies that would benefit younger generations. As these private meetings concluded, both King Charles and Princess Kate appeared energized rather than exhausted by the intensive discussions. Their genuine engagement with Commonwealth concerns had created productive conversations that would influence future royal priorities and initiatives. The success of these individual meetings demonstrated that effective Commonwealth leadership required substantial preparation, cultural sensitivity, and genuine commitment to member nations' welfare. The transition from public ceremony to private diplomacy had revealed different aspects of royal Commonwealth leadership, showing how King Charles and Princess Kate could adapt their approaches to meet different needs while maintaining consistent commitment to Commonwealth values and relationships. The evening portion of Commonwealth Day brought King Charles and Princess Kate to a grand banquet that would serve as both celebration and strategic networking opportunity for Commonwealth representatives. The setting in the historic Guildhall of London provided a magnificent backdrop that honored tradition, while accommodating the diverse cultural needs of international guests. Kate had worked extensively with event planners to ensure that the banquet reflected Commonwealth inclusivity rather than simply British royal tradition. The seating arrangement for the banquet represented weeks of diplomatic consideration. Princess Kate had personally reviewed the placement of every guest, ensuring that strategic conversations could develop naturally, while avoiding potential conflicts between nations with difficult relationships. Her approach balanced protocol requirements with practical relationship-building goals, creating opportunities for Commonwealth representatives to engage with each other, as well as with royal family members. King Charles opened the banquet with remarks that were both personal and substantive, sharing his reflections on the day's conversations and outlining his vision for Commonwealth cooperation in addressing global challenges. His speech avoided generic diplomatic language in favor of specific commitments and concrete examples of successful Commonwealth collaboration. The king's authentic enthusiasm for these relationships was evident to every guest in attendance. The banquet menu showcased culinary traditions from across the Commonwealth, with each course representing different member nations' contributions to global cuisine. Kate had insisted on authentic preparation methods and ingredients, working with chefs from various Commonwealth countries to ensure respectful representation of their culinary heritage. This attention to detail created conversation opportunities while demonstrating genuine appreciation for Commonwealth diversity. Musical entertainment throughout. The banquet featured performances by artists from multiple Commonwealth nations, creating a cultural exchange that went beyond mere background accompaniment. A jazz ensemble from Canada performed alongside classical musicians from the United Kingdom, while traditional dancers from Ghana presented choreography that had been adapted to include elements from other Commonwealth cultures. Kate had coordinated these collaborations, understanding that artistic partnership often created emotional connections that formal diplomacy alone could not achieve. The king moved throughout the banquet, spending time at different tables rather than remaining in a fixed position. This approach allowed him to engage in substantive conversations with many more Commonwealth representatives than traditional formal dinners would permit. His discussions ranged from technical cooperation agreements to cultural exchange programs, demonstrating the breadth of potential Commonwealth collaboration. Princess Kate focused particularly on conversations with spouses and family members of Commonwealth delegates, understanding that these personal connections often influenced official relationships in important ways. Her genuine interest in family stories, cultural traditions, and personal experiences created bonds that extended beyond formal diplomatic connections. These conversations often revealed insights about Commonwealth nations that official briefings could not provide. The banquet provided opportunities for announcing several major Commonwealth initiatives that King Charles and Princess Kate had been developing throughout the year. A new Commonwealth Innovation Fund would support technology development projects that addressed shared challenges like climate adaptation, healthcare delivery, and educational access. The announcement of this fund during the banquet allowed for immediate feedback from Commonwealth representatives who would be involved in its implementation. The king also announced the establishment of a Commonwealth cultural exchange program that would facilitate artist residencies, museum exhibitions, and educational partnerships between member nations. Kate had been instrumental in developing this initiative, drawing upon her patronage of arts organizations to create practical frameworks for cultural collaboration. The program would provide opportunities for Commonwealth artists to work in different member countries while sharing their traditions and learning from other cultures. Throughout the banquet, technology was used effectively to connect with Commonwealth leaders who could not attend in person. Video messages from absent heads of government were integrated naturally into the evening's program, while social media allowed real-time sharing of the event with broader Commonwealth audiences. Kate had suggested these digital connections to expand participation beyond those physically present in London. The banquet conversation revealed the complexity and sophistication of contemporary Commonwealth relationships. Representatives discussed trade agreements, climate policies, educational partnerships, and security cooperation with knowledge and enthusiasm that demonstrated the organization's continued relevance. The King and Princess Kate facilitated these discussions while contributing their own insights and suggestions. A particularly memorable moment occurred when representatives from nations that had experienced historical tensions found themselves engaged in productive conversations about future cooperation. The neutral royal setting had provided a space where past conflicts could be acknowledged, while focusing on shared interests and mutual benefits. Kate observed these interactions carefully, understanding how royal events could serve as platforms for relationship repair and development. The evening's entertainment included presentations by Commonwealth youth, organizations that had been supported by royal patronage throughout the year. These young people shared achievements in areas ranging from environmental conservation to technological innovation, demonstrating the practical impact of Commonwealth cooperation on future generations. The King and Princess Kate responded to these presentations with genuine interest and specific questions. that showed their ongoing involvement in supporting youth initiatives. As the banquet progressed toward its conclusion, the atmosphere had evolved from formal ceremony to genuine celebration of Commonwealth achievements and relationships. Laughter filled the historic hall as representatives shared stories, planned future collaborations, and expressed appreciation for the hospitality they had received. The success of the event was evident in the energy and enthusiasm that characterized conversations throughout the evening. The king's closing remarks reflected on the day's achievements, while looking forward to continued Commonwealth cooperation. His words emphasized partnership rather than leadership, recognizing that the Commonwealth's strength lay in voluntary collaboration between equals rather than hierarchical relationships. Kate's presence throughout his speech reinforced the message that royal support for Commonwealth relationships represented a long-term commitment that would continue across generations. The banquet concluded with a collaborative musical performance that brought together all the evening's entertainers in a celebration of Commonwealth unity. Representatives joined in singing, creating a moment of shared joy that transcended national boundaries and cultural differences. The image of King Charles and Princess Kate participating in this collective celebration captured the spirit of partnership and mutual respect that had characterized the entire Commonwealth Day event. As guests began departing, many expressed gratitude not just for the hospitality, but for the substantive engagement they had experienced throughout the day. The combination of ceremony, practical discussion, and personal connection had created an event that strengthened Commonwealth relationships while demonstrating the continued relevance of royal leadership in international cooperation. The late evening hours following the Commonwealth Day banquet found King Charles and Princess Kate in a private palace study, reflecting on the day's events and planning the follow-up actions that would transform ceremonial celebrations into practical Commonwealth cooperation. The king sat behind his desk, which was covered with notes, business cards, and commitment lists from the day's many conversations, while Kate reviewed her own detailed observations from the various meetings and interactions. The immediate success of the day was evident in the positive feedback already arriving through diplomatic channels. Commonwealth High Commissioners were reporting enthusiastic responses from their visiting delegations, with many expressing surprise at the depth of preparation and genuine engagement they had experienced from the royal family. Kate read through several messages aloud, noting particular praise for the inclusive atmosphere and substantive conversations that had characterized every aspect of the event. King Charles reflected on how different this Commonwealth Day had felt compared to previous years. His mother's approach had been deeply personal, but necessarily more formal, reflecting both different times and her own personality. Charles had consciously chosen to emphasize dialogue and partnership over ceremony and tradition, though he maintained respect for the institutional dignity that Commonwealth representatives expected from royal leadership. The princess shared her observations about which initiatives had generated the most enthusiasm among Commonwealth guests. The Climate Adaptation Network had attracted immediate interest from numerous island nations and African countries, while the educational exchange programs had excited representatives from across the Commonwealth. Kate's systematic approach to tracking these responses would inform the prioritization of follow-up efforts. In the coming weeks, both leaders recognized that the day's success would be measured not by immediate reactions but by the long-term strengthening of Commonwealth relationships and the practical achievements of new initiatives. They began developing action plans for the various commitments made throughout the day, identifying which palace staff would be responsible for specific follow-up tasks and establishing timelines for implementation of new programs. The king was particularly pleased with how the senior royals had performed their supporting roles throughout the day. Princess Anne's extensive knowledge of Commonwealth agricultural issues had contributed significantly to conversations about food security and sustainable farming practices. Prince William's engagement with youth delegates had created genuine connections that would likely develop into ongoing relationships as he assumed greater responsibilities for Commonwealth work. Kate reflected on the personal growth she had experienced through her preparation for and participation in Commonwealth Day activities. Her initial nervousness about engaging with complex international issues had given way to confidence in her ability to contribute meaningfully to these important relationships. The positive responses from Commonwealth representatives had validated her approach of combining careful preparation with authentic personal interest. The logistics and coordination challenges of the day had been successfully managed, but both Charles and Kate recognized lessons learned that would improve future Commonwealth events. Kate suggested creating a more systematic approach to pre-event relationship mapping, ensuring that royal family members could be even more strategically deployed to maximize their individual strengths and interests in serving. Commonwealth goals. Technology had played a supporting role throughout the day, but the King and Princess Kate discussed opportunities to expand digital engagement with Commonwealth nations that couldn't always send high-level representatives to London events. Virtual participation options could democratize access to royal Commonwealth activities while reducing travel costs and environmental impact for distant member nations. The cultural aspects of the day had been particularly successful, with musical and artistic collaborations creating emotional connections that complemented diplomatic conversations. Kate proposed developing these cultural exchanges into regular programming that would maintain Commonwealth connections between major events while providing ongoing opportunities for people-to-people relationships to develop. Both leaders acknowledged the delicate balance required in modern Commonwealth leadership between respecting member nations' sovereignty and providing the guidance and support that they sought from royal involvement. The day's conversations had revealed varying expectations and needs among different Commonwealth countries, requiring flexible approaches that could adapt to diverse circumstances while maintaining consistent principles. The success of the private meetings had demonstrated the value of moving beyond ceremonial interactions to substantive policy discussions. King Charles noted that Commonwealth representatives clearly appreciated having access to royal influence for addressing practical challenges, but they expected this support to be informed by genuine understanding rather than superficial concern. As they concluded their evening review, King Charles and Princess Kate began planning the ongoing Commonwealth work that would extend far beyond annual celebration days. The relationships built and strengthened during Commonwealth Day would require consistent attention and follow-through to maintain their momentum and deliver on the promises made during various conversations. The princess suggested establishing regular virtual meetings with Commonwealth youth leaders, creating ongoing dialogue opportunities that would keep royal leadership connected with changing generational perspectives. These sessions could provide early warning about emerging issues while ensuring that Commonwealth policies remained relevant to younger citizens who would ultimately determine the organization's future. The king reflected on his mother's legacy in Commonwealth leadership while recognizing that his own approach would necessarily be different. Queen Elizabeth II had built Commonwealth relationships during the decolonization era, when the organization's primary challenge was managing transitions from empire to voluntary association. Contemporary Commonwealth leadership required addressing globalization, climate change, technological transformation, and evolving expectations. For democratic governance, both Charles and Kate understood that their partnership in Commonwealth leadership represented a model for how traditional monarchy could adapt to serve contemporary international relationships. Their different strengths and perspectives had complemented each other effectively throughout the day, creating a collaborative approach that seemed to resonate positively with Commonwealth representatives. The day had concluded with both personal satisfaction and renewed commitment to Commonwealth service. King Charles felt confident that his vision for evolved royal leadership was achievable, while Princess Kate had discovered her own capacity for meaningful contribution to these important international relationships. Together, they had demonstrated that traditional institutions could remain relevant by adapting to serve contemporary needs while maintaining their essential character. As they prepared to leave the study, both leaders carried forward the energy and optimism that had characterized the entire Commonwealth Day experience. The success of this event would provide momentum for continued innovation in Royal Commonwealth service, ensuring that these vital relationships would continue strengthening in the years ahead.